our button. You want me to do that now?
Go ahead. Yep, we're good.
Welcome to those coming in. We will get started in just a few minutes, okay?
Well, good afternoon, everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started. We are excited to be here today for a series of webinars that we've been doing this week and will continue to do with our partner, ATD. I'm going to go ahead now and turn it over to Ann. Ann, take it away.
Thanks, Lisa. So I'm Ann Bryson Eldridge, and I am the president of the Association for Talent Development in South Carolina. We are a group of volunteers and professional talent development personnel from all kinds of different companies and agencies. Some of us are consultants, some of us work to train other employees in the workplace, but we all work to try to develop professionals as employees and to help them become better equipped to do their jobs. So today we are going to hear from Kevin Kaiser, who is with us in the video. You can see him and is going to be talking with you in the chat. Remember that if you have any questions, as the presentation starts, feel free to ask them in the chat, and Kevin and I will help to answer them. And then when we get done, we're going to go live for a little bit of Q&A after kind of the content that Kevin has to present to you. So without further ado, I will turn this over to Kevin so that he can introduce himself for Storytelling Isn't Just for Books.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Lisa, and thank you so much, Ann. I'm so excited to be here with y'all today. Again, my name is Kevin Kaiser. I'm the owner of Coastal Edge Learning and Development, a consulting company that does works on engaging methodologies and experiences to engage their audience in the world of classroom and virtual training. I am based in Charleston, South Carolina in the Low Country, and happy to be here today to share with you my story about gliding across the water. So let's have a look and listen to my video. And as you have questions, like Anne said, please feel free to roll them in. Here we go.
Go boat! Picture this. It's Saturday. You're on your favorite lake. You're laying there in the water with a ski rope between your legs. And that ski rope is attached 100 feet in front of you to a boat. As you're laying in that water, you yell, "Go boat!" And as that boat begins to go, you throw your head back in the water. That boat starts picking up speed. You start gliding through the water, first on your head, then on your back. And as the water starts to clear, you start riding on your butt. And as you're riding on your butt, you're thinking to yourself, holy cow, I'm gliding across the water. Then the moment of truth happens. You start to move your feet off of that rope, slowly put them in that water. And as you put your feet, your bare feet in that water, the water shoots you up and you're standing. You are literally walking on water. This is how you do a barefoot start in water skiing. Now, I'm Kevin Kaiser. I am the owner of Coastal Edge Learning and Development. And here today, I want to talk to you a little bit about storytelling and how it can help you and your leadership skills and your communication skills. Now, let me tell you, when I was 10 years old,
And we seem to froze up.
Yes, okay, hold on one moment. Let me see if I can get Kevin back. Hi, Kevin. Sorry for that technical difficulty.
That's okay. And do we know about where that left off? And I can restart us here.
I would say you are just a couple of minutes in.
Okay. I'm just going to back up a little bit and reshare. All right. Are we good to start again?
Sounds good.
Okay, perfect. Here we go.
I'm Kevin Kaiser. I am the owner of Coastal Edge Learning and Development. And here today, I want to talk to you a little bit about storytelling and how it can help you and your leadership skills and your communication skills. Now, let me tell you, when I was 10 years old, that's when that story was from, I must have fallen hundreds of times before I got to that point where I was actually gliding across the water at 45 miles an hour on my bare feet. Now, I have probably tried to give up dozens of times. I listened to my instructor, I listened to what they had to say. Sometimes I even didn't listen to my instructor because I thought I was doing it the right way anyways. But let me tell you, I tried over and over and over again. And sometimes for me, storytelling and communication can be a lot like barefoot water skiing. Sometimes you have to try over and over again. Sometimes you fail dozens and dozens of times. But when you can put together a really great story, it really helps your communication come across. For me, this was a big eye-opening experience in my leadership journey. Of course, I've talked to hundreds, thousands of people about a million different things. But one thing that always drives me when I try to discuss leadership is storytelling. For me, it's the easiest way for me to convey a message, to connect with my audience, to engage with the people that are out there, and make sure that I'm really relating to the people that I'm talking to. Now, I don't necessarily mean audience as a crowd of people, but sometimes it's simply talking to my wife, or a bunch of friends, or a teacher, or a client that I'm working with. Storytelling helps me connect to those people that are out there and gives me an opportunity to share my story. Now, I'm going to relate back to something that happened last year. It was right around Christmas time, and I was lucky enough to be home for Christmas, which I don't get to do too often. And as I was coming home for Christmas, one of the exciting things that I always get to do is see my goddaughter. She's 6 years old, and let me tell you, she is a pistol. So every year for Christmas, we go over to their house and say hello, all the normal Christmas pleasantries. But this year, it was a little different, okay? Out of nowhere, I open the door, you see this little bright-eyed 6-year-old come running all the way across the hall with something in her hand. I had no idea what it was. And she was ready to tell me a story. She was ready to connect with me because we hadn't seen each other in a while. So first, she looks up at me and says, Kevy, look what I have. Look what I have. And in her hand was this horse-like creature. I wasn't quite sure what it was. And she's like, hey, Santa brought me this really cool thing. Her name's Pinkie Pie. On and on. That Pinkie Pie is and she is a My Little Pony. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. Tell me all about it. So she went on and on and on. That Pinkie Pie is an energetic baker. I believe she had a pet alligator. She was part of this TV show, and she was some sort of a magical horse. Wow, she went on and on and on about this story, and I have to be honest, I know nothing about My Little Pony. But she was able to connect with me, and her enthusiasm and passion and excitement to tell me about this little horse that she got for Christmas really inspired me and reminded me why storytelling is so critically important. I would have to say she was one of the best storytellers I know, or is one of the best storytellers that I know. Her imagination that shines through her stories is incredible. Her level of excitement always pulls me in. I have to say, I hardly can ever relate to her on the topic that we're discussing, but the way she describes everything and the details that she goes into are absolutely incredible, and it makes me feel like I'm actually a part of every story she's telling, and I get drawn in. It's incredible. Now, I'm a little bit older than she is, and we don't have a lot of common topics that we can discuss, but when she's able to tell me a story, I can relate immediately to her. Now, I think you might be thinking, well, is she a professional storyteller? Has she been doing this forever? Does she practice? Well, no, she's a 6-year-old. So clearly she's not a professional. She's definitely not a professional. But does she drive me and bring me into that story every single time? Oh, 100%. Because of all of those great things that she does when she's telling that story. So let me ask you a question. Have you ever struggled to connect with somebody that you're talking to? Whether that's a friend, a peer group, a teacher, a family member, and you just couldn't figure out how to get past that barrier? Well, I think for me, I had those problems a lot when I was a kid. I always tried to figure out a way to connect. I was an only child. I was always constantly hanging out with my parents and my parents' friends, which were, of course, a lot more diverse in age. So I started to realize the more stories I could tell from my life, from my past, for things that I've done, the more I could connect with the people that I was working with. I used this tactic and strategy every day when I'm out there teaching, working with clients, working with groups, and trying to get them to connect with me and being able to convey some sort of a message to them. So if you are struggling or you're trying to find ways to do something different, to set yourself apart and grow as a leader, storytelling can definitely be one of them. There are so many ways that storytelling is part of our normal life. Now, the story doesn't have to be something that's absolutely incredible or different, but it has to be something that the audience can relate to, the people that you're talking to can relate to. And from my perspective, I put together these 3 simple tips that I want you to think about if you're going to start using storytelling. First is engaging, okay? This story needs to have something that's going to catch your ear or catch the person that you're talking to ear, okay? It has to be well thought up. It has to have vivid imagery. It has to be something that's unique and really is going to draw the people in, okay? And the better way that you can even tell it is how engaging you are. So the second thing, passion. Now let's relate back to my little 6-year-old goddaughter. Her passion is on another level with My Little Pony. So when she comes to me and she's excited and you can see the smile on her face and her hand gestures are going crazy and she is just ready to jump for joy because she's so excited to tell this story, those are kind of things that are around passion, okay? You, the storyteller, are the most important part of that story, and your energy carries through that. Now let's take an example here for a second. I'm going to share you a little story, and you tell me which feels a little bit better. Crack. The bat. The ball goes very far. I hit a home run. Okay, that's version 1. Or, let's try this one with a little bit more passion. I hit a home run. I swung so hard, that ball must have blew out of its skin. It was so exciting, and we won the baseball game, okay? Now, the passion around the first one, obviously a little bit lower. The passion around the second one, although not a complete story, you could tell by my voice and my excitement that I was definitely a lot more passionate about the second story and what I was telling. And that passion comes through when you're actually passionate about the topic. Like when I talk about barefoot water skiing or any other things that I love, that passion should come across when you're talking to your audience. Okay, now the third one, and arguably one of the things that I think is the most hardest to figure out, is detail. Okay, this is how you're painting that story with words. The words that you use, the detail that you go into is critical for any story. So I used to live in New York, and I'm going to tell you 2 different stories about New York. First, one day I went outside, it was very cold, and I had to shovel, so I put mittens on. Okay, not a terrible story, had some detail in it. Now, let's look at it this way. On Saturday, I went to school all week long, and I knew my mom wanted me to go out and shovel. And it was one of those kind of days where it was so cold outside that the icicles used to hang from my nose. I used to have to wear 3 layers of clothing before I even thought about going outside to shovel. All right, now again, first story, not too bad. Second story with the detail and hopeful imagery that I painted for you, I hope you all shivered a little bit because, I just felt that cold that I was trying to describe to you. With the icicles on my nose, 3 layers of clothing, and, maybe us down here in the South don't know that cold like it is up north, but it is very, very, very cold. So those details are critical as you paint that story for your audience to understand, whether that's a person you're talking to or a group of people that you're trying to connect with. I think storytelling is a really, really unique way when you look at your leadership skills to grow your leadership skills. We always talk about things like, being humble and humility and strong and emphasize on a lot of other different leadership traits, but sometimes the leadership trait of storytelling can really, really set you apart. So I want you to remember, Storytelling can be difficult, or it can be as easy as gliding across the water on your bare feet. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to me today. And if you have any further questions, again, my name is Kevin Kaiser, the owner of Coastal Edge Learning and Development. Thank you for your time.
All right. Thank you, Kevin, for that wonderful video and all that great content on storytelling. So we're going to fill out some of the rest of the time talking about some questions. So I've got a couple of questions kind of teed up for you first, and then we'll go to any questions that anybody in the classes who are attending have. If you want to have your teacher or you all type it into the chat, we'll go ahead and ask those questions as well at the end, okay? So we're going to start with Kevin. If I want to learn how to tell stories, how do I go about doing that?
Yeah, I have a great memory about this one. So for me, I learned how to tell stories from my grandfather. I think I know more about the past and his businesses that he used to run because he was a fantastic storyteller. Now, thinking about all of you out there, if you're trying to learn how to tell stories, the easiest thing for me, just like any sporting event or any activity that you do, is to practice. While you're out there, practice on your mom, practice on your brother or sister, try to tell some stories. Think about all of those great memories that you've had as a kid, and things that you do on a regular basis that you're excited to tell people about, and just practice with somebody.
Great. So if I want to tell stories, what kinds really should I focus on to, what kind of situations might I want to tell stories in?
Yeah, I think, sometimes my wife or some of my friends would agree that sometimes I tell stories too much. But realistically, it depends on your audience. If you're trying to convey a message to your teacher, for example, sometimes being able to tell them a story of why something is important to you is a great way to, share that story with them and to connect with them. So, I think there are so many things that we do in our lives that we might think is no big deal, but to somebody else might be an incredible story. So I would say, depending on who you're talking to, you can share all sorts of stuff. If it's a special interest group or a club you're in, or, a group of friends that's talking about something, a story is always a really cool thing to add.
Some of those teachers may not thank us for putting that idea in the student's head, especially when it comes to maybe reasons why their homework isn't done. So if I want some examples of stories so that I can learn to tell them better, who are some good storytellers that I can go and look for to listen to?
Now, I have three. Two of them are probably going to be really easily to relatable. Maybe one's a little bit more on my side of things. But for me, Dr. Seuss is an incredible storyteller. You think about some of the books for Dr. Seuss and the way he describes whatever crazy creature or thing that they're doing in the book. Dr. Seuss is a very imaginative, a very passionate storyteller from my perspective. So Dr. Seuss would be my first one. Second one is Walt Disney. Walt Disney had such a great way of being able to relate his creativity, his passion for helping people smile, and being able to portray that in an incredible way. So, you look at some of the Disney films, you look at some of the Dr. Seuss books, those are definitely great ones. And then probably from a maybe practical, maybe older perspective, Sheryl Sandberg, COO of Facebook, is an incredible storyteller. If you've ever read any articles about her, so teachers, if you're doing some homework out there and research, Sheryl has some great storytelling tips out there, and I think she's a great storytelling of how she got involved in Facebook and her life around Facebook. So that would be my three for you, Anne.
Oh, I totally agree. And, thinking about it, another place that might be good to look is something like TED Talks online.
Yeah.
There are a ton of great storytellers. They really teach them how to tell stories in those TED Talk presentations. So that'd be another good example, I think.
Yeah, definitely, Anne.
So how do you make a story sound natural? You talked a lot about detail and really having passion for it, but how do you make it sound like you really own it and it's just kind of floating off your tongue?
Yeah, I'll tell you, the first way not to make it sound natural is to tell a story that's not yours. Trying to be able to portray something that didn't actually happen to you, or that is a made up thing, like your dog ate your homework. Those stories do not make it sound natural. But realistically, for me, when I can tell a story that I'm excited about, that I lived through, that had an impact on my life. Like if I told a story about my grandfather, or again, my 6-year-old niece and all the crazy things she tells me, that speaks to me. And when you can speak on something that you have a lot of impact from, or a lot of passion around, it comes out a lot more natural. It's not even if sometimes you feel like you're telling a story, you're just talking sometimes. And I think the best storytellers, you sometimes don't even realize they're actually storytelling. They've wrapped you in so much that it's fantastic that way.
Wonderful. All right. Last one from me. Should I rehearse my stories? And if you think so, then how would I get started at that?
So for me, it's probably a yes or no question. I would say you don't necessarily have to rehearse your story, because if it's something you feel passionate about, and if it's, if you're talking to a bunch of your friends and you just want to tell a story, you can, and it should come out very naturally. But realistically, sometimes you have to practice storytelling. If you're using it for, a purpose, maybe I don't know, a job interview or something at school, or maybe it's a presentation you're doing, or a class or something of that nature. I think rehearsing is really important. I think it's a really fun opportunity for you to reflect on the story yourself. And one of the things that I always do when I'm trying to rehearse or trying to tell a story is, it sounds silly, I'll either stand in front of the mirror or I'll stand in front of my computer with the camera on. I know people talk about this all the time, rehearsing in front of the mirror, but it really, really does work. And it gives you a chance to focus on the details, look at the passion in your face, and understand exactly how you're reflecting that story. Whether that's a happy story, painful story, whatever it is, it just gives you an idea of what you're looking at. And I was always told when when I was younger, that when you stand in front of a mirror and try to practice a story, it's always best to start by telling yourself a story about yourself, if that makes sense. So I might sit in front of the mirror and say, "Hey, mirror, I'm Kevin Kaiser. I'm the owner of Coastal Edge Learning and Development. Thank you for watching me today." Right. So that's a story that I feel very comfortable about telling the mirror about myself. Okay. And being able to reflect on that moment of comfort that I have while I'm telling myself that story, and then actually then going practice that story and remembering back about how I felt at that moment of comfort. Because sometimes storytelling is uncomfortable, but you got to get your head and space and emotions together so that you can be able to, tell that story, from that perspective, from that comfort level perspective.
Oh, absolutely. And I totally agree about getting in front of the mirror on camera in order, I've been presenting to different groups for oh goodness, more than 15 years now. It's amazing that it's been that long, but more than 15 years. And nothing focuses your attention on how you are perceived the way looking at yourself on video does. It can be a little brutal, but it really does help. So Kevin, we've got one more question from the chat. There's a question about your career path. So can you tell us a little bit more about how you got into your own company?
Yeah, for sure. So I started out in college working for a large corporation, doing a variety of different, maintenance type jobs. And I worked in corporate America for about 16 years. And I specialized in environmental health and safety. So making sure employees were safe in their manufacturing facilities. So one of the things that I always did when I focused in health and safety was I constantly was doing training. I was always trying to make sure people were understanding what risks they had when they were doing their jobs. I worked with people to actually do training. And, from that space, I started this company about 5 years ago, because learning in that corporate America environment, I really wanted to make sure I was trying to create a space where I could help people grow and learn. And that's always been my mission. That's always been Coastal Edge's mission, is to work with people, help them grow and learn and share. and, you know, just continue that path in the learning space, because we can always continue to grow. So that's a quick brief into my career path of how I got to where I am.
Great, thank you. I've got another question from the chat. Would stories be good or appropriate to use in a job interview?
Ooh, this is a very good one. I love stories in a job interview. I actually, you know, I've interviewed a lot of people over my time, and I usually try to find a way to get them to tell me some sort of a story. And if you think it's about some of the questions that you get asked during an interview, it's kind of like you're telling a story in the first place. It might be like, you know, tell me about a time when you struggled doing a project. Well, that's a great opportunity for a story. You know, you can add the passion, you can show the imagery, you can add the right details, and you can really help answer that question and paint that picture for them. I mean, typically in an interview, it's somebody you probably don't know, you've never met, and you have, you know, maybe an hour with them. So why not tell them a story? Why don't you share with them a little bit about yourself? And I think storytelling is a great way to do that.
Absolutely. You know, when I've interviewed people in the past as well, I always want to get to know not just, you know, what they've done in the past, but also more about who they are. And finding out through stories what they've learned from those experiences can make a huge difference. I've got another question. What is your favorite book or story?
Oh man. Maybe Oh, the Places You'll Go. That's always one that pops up in my head. I mean, obviously right now I'm reading Imagine It Forward by Beth Comstock. It's a little different than Oh, the Places You'll Go, but it's a phenomenal book. So maybe we'll take both ends of the spectrum, Oh, the Places You'll Go and Imagine It Forward by Beth Comstock.
I hadn't heard of that one. I'll definitely have to look it up.
She's
Well,
fantastic.
it looks like that is the end to our questions. So unless anyone has any other questions added to the chat, I believe that we are done. Thank you, Kevin, so much for your participation and your information on storytelling. Thank you to the classes out there who are watching it. And thank you to Lisa and Samantha from MEBA for giving us the opportunity to provide this content to the students. With that, we will finish up.
Thanks, guys. It was great.
Thanks. Bye.